Welcome to the Firestarters video series. My name is Steve Scheier. I've worked in cannabis since 2018. I talk and write about power, and I offer leaders in cannabis leadership guidance and help them create curated advisory boards. I'm the author of Power Up, Essential Tools for Cannabis Leaders, which is available on Amazon. Our guest today, and I'm really excited to see him today, is Sparky Rose. Sparky is one of the most wonderful people I've met in cannabis in the last few years, and I'm really glad to have him on the show. Now, I usually, by heart, give a little intro to my guest, but his bio is so impressive that I'm actually going to read it, so bear with me. Sparky has a long history in cannabis. He is currently the managing partner of Chicago-based growth consultancy, Supercritical. His firm provides full-spectrum consulting services designed to extract maximum value for their cannabis clients. Sparky is also a partner at 4042 North, a cannabis-focused brand marketing agency that he co-founded in Chicago. Sparky has a unique skill set as a brand marketer and an experienced cannabis operator, and he has garnered the attention of top-tier cannabis companies internationally. And this is great. Sparky is also a drummer, a close-up magician. I have no idea what a close-up magician is. Maybe he'll tell us. He's happily married to his wife, Kat, and the owner of two very loud and very cute miniature schnauzers, Putty and Tig. Putty and Tig.
That's correct.
Okay, I wasn't.
That is it.
I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, is it really Putty? Okay, good.
Steve.
It's all good that it is. I just want to make sure I wasn't blowing it.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. Really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
So, Spark, I always ask people when we start off the show, they give us three words which talk about or speak to the state of cannabis in the U.S. What would three words from you be?
I would say underutilized, unforgiving. I'm going to use a lot of uns. Underutilized, unforgiving, and unfair. Although I'm very positive and bullish about the industry, there's a lot of things we could be doing a lot better in certain areas, particularly areas that most of the industry is attuned to right now, matters of social equity, matters of respecting the plant. It's something that's very big with me and my partners at Supercritical, having reverence for the plant. Anyone who's been to Illinois, and I love all the people who work in the industry here. I really don't want to say a bad thing about them, but by far the worst commercial cannabis in the United States of America comes out of Illinois. The product quality here is just really, really bad. And I feel like people aren't giving reverence to the plant. And so I would like to see everyone kind of big up the industry, big up themselves, start operating with a few more ethics and adherence to professional conduct, and I think we'll get to where we want to go.
That would be great. Ethics and adherence to professional conduct. Yes, that would be good. So, Spark, you have an incredible story in cannabis. You're also not a Johnny-come-lately, so to speak. You've been in it for many years. So perhaps you can give us your autobiography of your experience in cannabis and how you got to be at this point.
Sure. I'll try not to talk too fast because I tell this story several times a day, so it's a bit rote. But I started my career about 30 years ago as a graphic artist, and moved into brand marketing kind of as you do on that particular career path. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. I had a design studio there that focused on internet design back in like 1994, which got rolled up by a larger company called IXL out of Georgia, rolling up a bunch of internet studios. And then I went to work at the Discovery Channel in Bethesda, Maryland. I was the creative director of their advanced television studio and digital cable networks for a period of time. And then I moved to San Francisco to work for a company called Viant, which was one of the big 6 internet consultancies at the time, and was loving life, loved San Francisco. We went public. I made a bunch of money in the public offering. And then their largest client, Robert Half International, which is the world's largest specialized staffing company, hired me away as the head of their e-business initiatives. I was basically building a monster.com killer for them when the .com bubble burst. And so we shelved that project, and I moved into corporate development, mergers and acquisitions, which is basically picking through the rubble of the dot-com bust to try and find some technologies that they could buy on the cheap. Did that for a short period of time, and then my career took a hard left turn, and I opened a contemporary jewelry and metal arts gallery in the Castro district of San Francisco. For folks who don't know, the Castro district is kind of the ground zero for the gay movement in the United States of America, and we opened this gallery right when San Francisco had legalized gay marriage. So we were doing gangbusters business, and then 4 months in, September 11th happened, and no one was traveling and no one was buying luxury goods. So I found myself on the job market, was looking for a job, having no luck. The internet bubble had just burst. I was an internet strategist at the time. No one was hiring people like me. So I did what anyone else would do. I joined a punk rock band. I've been playing the drums since I was about 4 years old and just needed to get out of my house for my sanity. And so I joined a band called the Cop Outs, and we were at rehearsal, and my bass player had lupus, and he heard me complaining about the job market, and one day piped in and just said, "Hey man, I work at a cannabis club. It doesn't pay much, but $15 an hour, they'll pay you to stand behind the counter and sell weed." I had heard of cannabis clubs, but I had never been in one. I had been to Amsterdam, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. I was a musician, so obviously I was a friend of the plant. And so I figured I'll do it until I get a real job. Started at a place called Compassionate Caregivers in Oakland. 8 weeks after I started, I became executive director of Compassionate Caregivers in Oakland. Reason being, when I started, there were like 4 or 5 clubs in Oakland, right around the Fox Theater on Telegraph Avenue, if you're familiar with downtown Oakland. And 8 weeks after I joined, that had blown up to about 14 dispensaries, all in the same area. And everyone started to call that strip of Telegraph Avenue Oaksterdam. And the Oakland City Council, they didn't care for that shit at all. And they were like, we got to get a handle on the situation. And so they decided to license clubs. They were only going to allow 4. I put together an application for Compassionate Caregivers. We won one of the 4. Those are the first 4 dispensary licenses that were ever issued in the United States of America. And I grew Compassionate to 7 dispensaries, depending on time of operation, between 2 and 3 cultivation centers at any given time, about 280 employees. We were doing $5 million a month in revenue. Got raided by the DEA. I pled to lesser charges. I got sentenced to 37 months in federal prison, served 22 inside, 6.5 by house, and I got released from prison a little over 11 years ago. Stayed in Los Angeles for the first year under the terms of my supervised release, and then I moved here to Chicago. Had no interest in getting back in the weed game. I was working at Ogilvy and Mather, and my wife had introduced me to a friend of a friend who helped folks out here get their license applications together for the original medical marijuana license, medical marijuana pilot program in Illinois. And she actually needed some help with some brand work. So I did some branding for her, and then she wanted to start her own company. So I helped her start a company called Sacred, which started its life as a THC-infused personal lubricant company. It's now a hemp-derived CBD pain management company, mostly topicals and tinctures with national distribution. We also have a private label business where we sell our formulations, sans cannabinoids, to licensed operators for THC and ratioed infusion. And so that was going great. And after Sacred, I co-founded Papa and Barkley, which is the #1 topicals brand in California. And did all the branding and brand marketing at Papa and Barkley for the first 2 years. Still a shareholder. They launched an edibles line in 2020, small craft concentrates line. After Papa and Barkley, I was the chief marketing officer at PharmaCann, multi-state operator based here in Chicago. While at PharmaCann, I built their marketing team, developed their product line under the Matter brand, redesigned their dispensary experience under the Verilife brand. And then after PharmaCann, started 4042 North, cannabis-focused brand marketing agency based here in Chicago. And then in 2019, started Supercritical with my partners, Jay Caauwe and Kerry Jordan. And that pretty much brings us to date.
Yes, it does. And a couple of things. Number one, I want to get into Supercritical and what it does in a second. But you really built a big enterprise with Compassionate Caregivers. You had how many employees?
About 200, a little over 280 when we were at our largest.
7
dispensaries.
7 dispensaries. Yeah. So, you know, you're a builder of companies also, in addition to being a strategist. And so I was wondering, what was your philosophy about building a company?
I wish it was as well thought out, informed as it should be in a regular business. A lot of it was developed kind of at the moment, running very fast, and was more reactionary than I otherwise would probably elect to do it. So when I took over Compassionate Caregivers, it had already been operating for at least a year. And it was operated, the guy who owned it was an old school drug dealer from Alaska. I mean, he was a dyed in the wool criminal, and wanted to go legit, especially once they decided to start licensing. And he met me when I just started there, and I had a business background, and so he wanted me to help him turn his company legit, so then we could try to get a license in, you know, in Oakland and go totally legit, because it's still a wildly gray area as far as operating dispensaries. We had approval from the local governing body, whether it's the city council or board of supervisors, everywhere we operated. We also had the okay from local law enforcement, but there weren't like licenses. You were just okay to operate and nobody messed with you. And so when we were putting together Compassionate, or when I took over Compassionate, the first thing I wanted to do is try to introduce a little more experience. But the limitations you really have back then was it wasn't, it was legal in the state, but like there weren't any regulations. There was SB 420, which is a really poorly worded piece of legislation, and that's it. We were a self-governed body, if you will. So you still had a lot of the black market fears. You didn't put ads in the newspaper. You didn't put ads in the newspaper to hire people. You hired somebody that one of your employees could vouch for. You're either related to them, you're dating their sister, you've known them for 20 years, because I don't need you going out to the club, getting caught with a dime bag of cocaine, and then when the police pick you up, you go, well, I know where they're growing a shit ton of weed to try and get out of a crappy little charge. And so who you hire has got to be someone you inherently trust, because your safety is on the line, your personal health and welfare and safety. And so it really changes the hiring process. You kind of have to take what you can get. The other big thing that we really had to wrestle with was shrinkage. You know, when you're in an all cash business, and of my 7 locations, there were 2 powerhouse locations, Oakland and West Hollywood. Each one of those locations did between $80,000 and $100,000 a day in revenues, in cash money mostly. And so when you have people that you're paying $15, $17, $25 an hour to stand behind the counter and sell weed, when they see all this cash coming in, their fingers naturally get a little sticky. They're like, well, I should be getting some of this. I'm on the front line. And so a lot of product walks out the door. And so we had to get really creative about how we create opportunity. And so there's 2 things about Compassionate Caregivers that I'll always pat myself on the back for. One is what we call the Shake program, and 2 was Dispensary in a Box. And the Shake program is what I created as someone who, we were selling about 200 pounds of weed every week. And in our cultivation centers, we mostly, we didn't flower a lot. We did a lot of clones. We made a lot of money on clones. We sold a ton of clones, and they were cheaper and easier to grow. We bought most of our cannabis on the open market. And so we generate a lot of shake, and we did a lot of pre-rolled joints. We did everything we could with the shake. And back then, concentrates weren't as well developed. There wasn't a lot of equipment. It was pretty, just like home chemist operation. It was pretty janky at best. And so you really weren't producing a lot of concentrates, particularly things like butane, hash oil and stuff like that. You were mostly doing keefs and had just kind of your regular hash, ice water hash, that sort of thing. And so we're buying all this weed, we're creating a bunch of shake, we're trying to use it, but we just can't get through all of it. We just have too much freaking weed, and it's weed that you really can't sell. So what I did is I just told all my employees, I said, hey, I will front you a pound of shake for like a couple $100. You take it home, you go make what you're going to make your brownies, make cookies, make hash, make whatever. You come back, I'll buy it from you to sell to the patients, and then you'll pay me for the shake after the fact. And we called it the Shake program. So you could basically create your own little cottage industry, pardon the schnauzers. I told you they were loud.
I thought that was very well done. Yeah.
You could create your own little cottage industry and participate, and this allowing this opportunity meant people didn't have to steal from me.
So what was did you see theft really go down?
Our shrink got down to like 0.3%, like real, like low for regular retail, forgetting it was cannabis. It
Right.
almost went non-existent. And our product line was huge. We had more products than anybody because
This
all
is
my
a really
employees
great
were making their own
example.
products.
This is a really great example of a leader, you coming, seeing a problem and trying to come up with an innovative idea, something different. Your response could have been, I'm going to crack down hard on these people. They're not going to steal from me. But no, you decided quite wisely to harness their entrepreneurial spirit and to understand that they wanted to be more participating in the entire process.
It wasn't a stroke of genius. It was, I was really helped by the fact that I did work behind the counter for the first 8 weeks of my career at Compassionate Caregivers. I was just a Joe. I really didn't care about the job. It was something to do. I was just, hey, I work in a weed store. It was more novel than anything. But working there, seeing all the money pass through my hands, having just been laid off at my job, having a house in downtown San Francisco, and still paying all the expenses, the gallery didn't fold. It just wasn't doing any business. And so I've got all this money pouring out of my account, and I'm getting paid $15 an hour to deal with tens of thousands of dollars a day. And even I was like, damn, man, I mean, how are these people not robbing this guy blind? And that's how I got the job.
Right.
I was talking to the owner, and I when I see something interesting, I like to write summary business plans. It's kind of a geeky hobby that I have, and I see something, I'm like, how would I do it? So I get on, I type it. I got to get it out of my system, and that's what I did while I was at Compassionate. And one day, the owner asked, "Hey, is there a way we could improve the situation here?" And I said, "Well, I wrote a business plan about like how I'd kick your ass if I wanted to do it on my own." I was like, "You can have it if you want it." And he really keyed in on inventory control because he ran the place like a drug dealer. They had no real inventory control. And he said, "Hey, could you build an inventory control system?" And I said, "Sure." So I put it together in a few weeks. We lit it up. And in a couple of weeks, we found out the top 3 people were stealing around $100,000 a month.
Wow.
And so he fired them and made me the executive director. That's how I got the job.
Wow. Amazing. All right. Well, that is an awesome story. And let's move on to your current work with Supercritical. Can you tell us about your focus with Supercritical and what you're trying to build there?
It's funny because, it's not as clear as I would like it. So Supercritical, we started Supercritical in October of 2019. We started a little bit earlier, but we officially hung the shingle on October 1, 2019. And we started as a capital services firm. Both my partners, Jay and Kerry, are deep financial backgrounds. Jay, Vice President of Business Development at the Chicago Board Options Exchange, previously held a seat on the CME. Kerry was at NASDAQ, was at Bank of America Alternative Investments, strong private equity background, both killers. Kerry's a certified financial analyst. I mean, they're both killers in their field and squarely around finance. And I was the cannabis guy. And so we started, but we didn't know that in like 2 months there was going to be a global pandemic. And I mean, that came out of nowhere and nobody was putting money in anything. So in our first year, we kind of got crushed, and we ended up doing a lot of consulting. We did some license work because they opened up adult use licensing here in Illinois. So we put together some applications for some folks. And after our 1-year anniversary, we're like, let's talk about the last year, what worked and what didn't work. And obviously capital raising wasn't working, and we were still in a pandemic. So we pivoted to growth consulting. We had done some of that work during the pandemic. I've got a pretty deep Rolodex, haven't been in the industry for close to 17 years. And so we basically kind of monetize that. We affectionately call it the Spark List. And basically it's all the people that I know and trust in the industry. And we try to help, companies grow through strategic partnerships. And what we've really kind of become known for is helping brands expand outside of their native state. So if you're a Papa and Barkley, obviously, then, they're currently a California-based operation. If they want to sell their product in Colorado, you got 2 main choices. You're either going to rebuild what you've got in California, in Colorado at great expense, or you're going to find a licensed partner who can produce your product for you. And so that's where we come in. I know many of the manufacturers that exist out there. I've got, close relationships with some of them. And anybody who knows this industry knows that this industry is built on relationships first and everything else second. And so having that trust factor has really turned out, really, really good for us. And so, we onboard clients in various facilities. And then over 2022, 2023, Supercritical will be moving into operating. So we're currently negotiating to buy a facility in Colorado and set up facilities in Illinois and
So what's the
Michigan
reason
for
for that
co-manufacturing.
change? What's the reason for that change?
Really, it was two. I'd say two. One is, the consulting game is elevator assets, right? You can only build as much time as you have. So you would like to build something that has some sort of enduring growth trajectory outside of just us being able to bill hours. Number one. Number two, I'm kind of getting too old for consulting. I mean, it's a lot. Hey, being an operator is a lot of work, but it's just a different type of work. You chase your money a lot in consulting, whereas with an operator, it's a little more consistent. And it was just opportunity. So we have a partner in Colorado, very well-respected partner, and we started working with them, helping get their brands into other states. And they own this facility and decided that they wanted to go a more asset-light model. Their production is not their strong suit. Formulation and brand marketing is their strong suit. And so while we were working with them, they decided that they really wanted to focus on the things they do well. And they asked us to sell the facility for them. And we were like, sure, we help find a buyer. And as we started thinking about it, we're trying to onboard people at various facilities in the US. And we were like, if we owned and operated our own facility, that would be really advantageous in a lot of different ways. And so over the last year, we've been negotiating with our partner, and we decided to take over the facility, and hopefully the proposed close date is March 15th right now. So hopefully early May, there'll be a public announcement. Our consulting, I think, is a very important part of growing this co-man business. So we'll continue to consult. I'm probably going to reduce my responsibilities at some of the other organizations. My responsibilities at 4042 North are pretty light as it is. They might go a little bit lighter after the transaction, just because I'm going to have to put a little more focus on the operating entity. But yeah, Supercritical is going to largely be the same. This is just another avenue. When someone comes to us to say, hey, we want to get into other states, you'll come knowing I can onboard you in Colorado pretty much tomorrow. And by the end of 2023, hopefully I'll be able to, onboard you in 3 states on day one, if you've got the right product. So we think it all works together and feeds together. And while you could just say, hey, let's go out and get co-man clients the traditional way. I mean, you have a sales force, you're making your calls and all that sort of thing. And that's great. Why not get paid to make sales calls? We can go out and consult with people, and through those consulting agreements, we tend to learn, oh, you've got a great product. Oh, you've got something very unique. Have you thought about putting that product in Colorado? And now they become a client of our co-manufacturing business. So I think there's a very natural flow between the two. And so we're going to keep them up for sure.
Okay. And so one of the things I love about you, and I love, working with you and Jay and Kerry on, is that you're very, very creative people. You have very sharp minds and you're very creative people. So what do you think are the major opportunities in cannabis in the next year or 2 or 3? What are you really excited about? Because I know you're excited about the plant and the opportunity in general, but what are you really looking for?
I personally am very excited with the beverage space. And it's kind of becoming all the rage right now, and everyone's talking about the industry. We've been talking about it for more than a year. And now that we're going to be operators, we're very excited about the beverage space. My opinion is, as legalization really started to step up, and you started to see states like Illinois and Michigan and a lot of states start to onboard adult use, everyone in the industry had pretty much settled on the idea that the vape pen was going to be the silver bullet to mainstreaming cannabis. Although I hate this term, and I think it's overused and used poorly, it's common enough that you kind of have to bring it up. Everyone was going after the Chardonnay mom. And the idea was, after the kids, you bring them back from soccer practice, instead of having that glass of Chardonnay, now she'll have a vape because it's not fattening, and, alcohol causes something like 14 14 or 15 different types of cancer and all this sort of stuff. And everyone thought it was going to be the vape pen. And then the whole vitamin E acetate vape crisis went down. And while that didn't crush the marijuana vape market, it definitely had a bit of an impact financially. But I think the real impact was it created a general distrust of vapes. And especially trying to tie it to jewel and nicotine vapes in teen use through that vape crisis, I think that did a lot more damage than people realize. And so I think that pretty much takes vapes largely off the table for your Chardonnay mom or your soccer mom. And so I think that beverages are going to be the mainstream vector at the end of the day. I could be wrong. One thing I can tell you without fail is that the thing that mainstreams cannabis, the winning products, the products everyone wants, the products you want to make if you're an operator, it's going to be consistency, convenience, and discretion. Those are the three things that must be present in a product in order for you to go mainstream. It's got to be a consistent experience. I've got to be able to easily titrate it, which is why people really like vapes. The effect is instant, and it's very easy for me to adjust up or adjust down my high with a vape pen. Now with nanoemulsification and some other new technologies that we're seeing, we're getting onset times through beverages and in some cases gummies and so forth as fast as 7 minutes, which is extremely quick. We're getting close to vape-like response. And so when you start looking at that, beverage has it all. It's extremely convenient. I mean, because at the end of the day, you're talking about in most states a limit of 100 milligrams of THC in any given product. And so with 100 milligrams of THC is barely half a grain of rice. So, I mean, yeah, people are doing 12-ounce beverages. That's not super convenient, but I could do little energy shots. I mean, at the end of the day, a breath spray really is just a really, really small beverage. So when you really start thinking about, the form factors, really small. The beverage can be convenient. It's very easy to use. I don't need any paraphernalia. It's open it, put it in my mouth. It doesn't get a whole lot easier than that. It's wildly discreet. No one's going to have any idea that I'm using cannabis. It's everything you want. It's absolutely everything you want. And it's very familiar. It's a familiar form factor. It's not like a dab. It's not like a vape pen. There's no battery. There's none of that shit. So I believe that beverages are going to mainstream cannabis. And when mainstream cannabis happens, everything is going to change. Because right now there just is not enough competition for meaningful change to happen. So you're just kind of getting I feel kind of a homogenized version of products and product availability that, walk into any dispensary, look around, and then I don't know about, Seattle. I think what you guys have like Bevmo, Beverages and More. You have Binny's in Illinois and Chicago. Walk into any one of those large format beverage stores and count how many options you have. Then go compare it to your dispensary. And then you tell me that there's no room in cannabis. You tell me that the MSOs have taken over and there's no room for the small guy. I call bullshit. There's so much room in this industry. The other big thing to look at is anything outside the cannabinoid economy. Everyone loves to talk about THC, CBD, Delta 9, Delta 8. We can go on and on. CBN, CBG, minors, majors. Hey, man, what about, fibers? What about bioplastics? What about biofuels? What about building materials? There's so much more opportunity of the things you can do with this plant, with the stuff that we cast off from the cannabinoid economy. All the spent waste that we throw away can be made into amazing, amazing products that solve a lot of the major problems that the world is seeing right now. Global warming, sustainability. It sounds corny and sort of 60s stonery, but it is a magical plant. Make no mistake. And in 10,000 years, humanity will look back on the prohibition of cannabis and say, what the fuck were you thinking?
Spark, as always, you are a highly thoughtful person, and I'm grateful for your thinking on this. I also want to give a small shout out to two people I know, because I really agree with you about the beverage space. Lisa Hurwitz, who's Firestarters video is going to drop a week from Thursday. We were happy to have Lisa on the show a few weeks ago. And also
She's a lot of fun.
She is a lot of fun. And my friend Rick Gillis, Lisa's the CEO of Happy. And then Rick Gillis, who is in Southern California, who runs the Tinley Beverage Company, who I also really like quite a bit.
One of our partners.
Yes, love those guys. So, Spark, as we're wrapping up today, and thank you again for being on the show. I write about power and leadership, and When you hear, I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book, again, a shameless plug for the book, is about how, from my point of view, there are many stories in popular culture about people who become power mad. We all have in our heads that famous quote from Lord Acton, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yes, there are people out there in the world who go crazy. I'm more worried about the people who are not using their power. I think that on my website, I talk about how power, it's sort of like lighting a city, that if you're underpowered, you can't run a city. And if you're overpowered, you're like Chernobyl, and that's not good either. So I'm trying to move people from a state of not as much power as they can really offer the world to a state of constant, regular, thoughtful power. So when you think about power and leadership in the cannabis space, what do you think needs to happen for the space to be successful?
And this is going to be a little narrow-minded because I live in Illinois, and although we work with companies everywhere, we do an inordinate amount of Illinois business for obvious reasons. I really think the cannabis consumer needs to take their power back. What's going on here in Illinois, both on the product side and on the licensure side and with social equity, is a travesty. It's really it's been so poorly managed. It's really painful, and the quality of products that are in our market. I mean, if there's a crime, it shouldn't be selling weed. It should be selling some of the stuff we sell in Illinois and calling it weed, to be honest. It's just bad. And I don't like saying bad things about people, but it's the truth. And you can ask anybody who has sampled weed in several states, and universally they'll tell you that it's terrible here. This is not just Sparky going on a rant. And I think that it's time for us as the consumers to say, hey, we demand more, we demand better. We want to see these licenses released. We're tired of the state not, we feel like we're in an abusive relationship with our state over how they're handling the cannabis marketplace from products all the way through to legislation. And so I think the consumers need to take their power back. I don't think, I'm not pro cancel culture, but I'm very pro voting with your dollar. And I don't think we do enough of that in general. Demand better, because there's better. And also sample, get out of your comfort zone. Go to California, go to Colorado, really mature markets, go to Massachusetts. I've had some fantastic product. Michigan, I mean, there's a lot of really amazing cannabis out there. Go try it, see what you're missing out on, and then go home and demand better.
All right. So Spark, tell us how people can reach you if they're so inclined.
Absolutely. You can email me directly, Sparky, SPARKY, at supercritical.agency. You can go to the Supercritical website. I threw it together in about a weekend when we started the company. We need a new one real bad, but I'm not completely embarrassed by it. But you can go check it out, and you can reach us through the contact form there. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, pretty much anywhere. I'm happy to give anyone a half hour of my time, particularly anyone who wants to get involved in the industry. We need more participants in this industry to have the best industry we can. And so anyone who wants to get involved in the industry, you want to know how to get involved, how to get a job in the industry, anything like that, I'm happy to chat you up and help you however I can.
All right. Well, Sparky, thank you so very much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. You've been just a joy to work with over the last year or so. And
you're too nice.
And I really, really appreciate it. So thanks very, very much.
Thank you, Steve. And I will give you a tremendous plug. I've dealt with lots of people in this industry. You're easily one of the finest people I've met. Introduced me to much more amazing people, which is rare because I know most of the people in this business. So it's always surprising to meet new people. But you've been great. We've been working together now for like maybe a year. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on, and happy to do it again anytime.
All right. Well, thanks, Spark. You take care.